Good day, everyone. Today we have Dr. Nicole L. Dugan in the house and Alessandra Nicholson. Welcome, guys. Welcome. I'll give
Welcome.
you a little bio of Mrs. Dugan, Dr. Dugan. Dr. L. Dugan, PT, DPT, MSOD, CLT, LANA, WCS, graduated from Temple University MPT and DPT programs in 1997 and 2003, respectively. At the onset of her career, she obtained clinical specialty and is now a board certified women's health clinical specialist through the APTA and certified lymphedema therapist through Lymphedema Association of North America. She spent 18 years working at Penn Medicine, Good Shepherd Penn, partners development, and mentoring in both the pelvic floor and the lymphedema rehabilitation programs. While there, she oversaw the development and accreditation from the APTA for Women's Health Residency Program. Nicole's clinical specialties have allowed her the opportunity to participate in multiple NIH funded multi center research studies and publications.
In 2015, Nicole joined Jefferson Health Systems in Philadelphia to focus on developing the pelvic rehabilitation program. With the focus on functional manual therapy, her clinical practices focus on treating all genders for pelvic dysfunction, pregnancy, postpartum, bowel and bladder, and sexual dysfunction. Nicole is dedicated to the multidisciplinary approach to managing patients with pelvic dysfunction. She is adjunct faculty at many academic facilities, including multiple Doctor of Physical Therapy programs, Jefferson Medical College, and nursing school. She has been an invited speaker at international conferences on lymphedema management and pelvic rehabilitation, and she provides pelvic rehabilitation services in Jamaica through Medicine in Action, which is a medical mission. She's also the co-founder of the Philadelphia Regional Pelvic PT Alliance, which is a multidisciplinary organization focused on providing education and networking opportunities for pelvic therapists. When Nikki is not working, she enjoys travel, golf, and spending time with her husband and daughter. Thank you so much for joining us on the process today, Nicole.
Thank you for
Welcome.
having me.
welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, which you have an expansive bio. Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself that wasn't in the bio, so that the viewers could know exactly what your specialty is and what you're gonna walk into tell us today.
Well, it's interesting. I decided I wanted to be a physical therapist when I was 16. And of
That's
course,
young.
when I was 16, I didn't know anything about pelvic health. I decided I wanted to be a PT because I, played sports in high school and, hung out with the athletic trainer. And he's like, you don't want to be an athletic trainer. That's not fun. Be a physical therapist. So I looked into it and I said, this is something cool. So I thought I was going to be like sports PT and, working with athletes, etc. I went to undergrad and I fell in love with genetics. So then I was like, I'm going to be a pediatric physical therapist so I can combine PT with genetics. And then I did one day volunteering at AI DuPont. I went to University of Delaware undergrad. I did one day volunteering at AI DuPont. I was like, that's not for me. So I was back to being a sports PT. And then I took my first job at Penn, and that was really on the heels of the Women's Health Initiative, which this is back in the 90s. So at that time, there was this realization that there is not enough women in research or kind of dedicated to women's health access to care. So what that trickled down to in rehab was physical therapy interventions for women, and that included breast cancer rehabilitation and lymphedema. Mm-hmm. And so I raised my hand to get certified with that. And then it also included pregnancy and postpartum issues. And so I raised my hand to do that. And so that's how I kind of got these specialties. It was paid for by work, and they paid for all that stuff. And so I just kind of took advantage of everything that they were offering. And that's how I ended up in pelvic health 25 years ago. Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I heard two things that stood out to me. One, that you had an idea of what you wanted to do when you were 16, but you did that one day of volunteering and you were like, no, this isn't exactly it. And you were able to refocus yourself. Sometimes I see people will drive themselves towards something because they think that's okay, this is what I made a decision to do. But you were pretty clear, not this type of PT.
Yeah. I mean, I knew I wanted to do PT. I was just trying to figure out where I fit. And then, like who wouldn't want to work with kids? Like it's all fun and whatever until you're like, these kids are really sick. And, like it just, for me, it just pulled on my heartstrings too much. Like I just couldn't come home every day. So sad. And
right. It takes a special kind of heart to be able to carry that all day and then not carry it home with you.
Exactly. I mean, I do see, with working with cancer patients and, other kinds of, transgender and assault and all these other issues that, kind of show up in the pelvic health area. I see that regularly. It's just a different kind of, heartache. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the other thing that I heard, especially because one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on is just to highlight different healthcare areas. And so hearing you say that you took advantage of the programs that are being offered when you were working and had that to support you to get these different specialties. How did you find out about that stuff?
Well, so it's interesting because, it was an initiative through the whole University of Penn health system, which kind of came down from the National Institute of Health, which is like, we need to, like who are involved in research studies, college age men who volunteer and they're like 25 to 45. And that doesn't help women or older people or anybody else. So that really kind of came to front in the late 80s. And so they were just looking to see who would kind of do these initiatives. So I said, I will do it. And the other thing was, at the time, I was reading this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Rod Kiyosaki. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, but he was like, take advantage of every benefit that your work has to offer, particularly education, because guess what? You're the one that's getting educated and you can walk out the door tomorrow and you're walking away with the information, not them. So you're like, you're adding like a third to your paycheck by taking advantage of like all these other benefits. And so at that time, they were not offering lots of other stuff, but they were offering this. So I said, I'll do it. You know what I mean? And so, sometimes, you just never know these gifts that are just going to be forwarded to you. And it's taken me all over the world. And what I had never predicted, but, physical therapists don't normally travel internationally.
Right.
For care. Like healthcare is usually delivered within 30 miles of your house. So to be able to travel internationally multiple times for these particular clinical specialties, you just never know what gifts are going to be provided or, sought out. So it really has ended up and will continue. I'm right in the middle of my career now. It's not over. Take advantage of these fabulous opportunities.
That's awesome.
That's excellent. So how did you in your journey? I know you said you volunteered. You were working at the time, correct?
Yeah.
So what kept you motivated in taking all these courses and going to school for that length of period of time?
I'm just a geek at heart, I guess. I'm like, lifetime
nerd.
I embrace it. I'm a lifetime learner. Everybody's like, when's Nikki going back to school? It's about time for another degree. I'm just a lifetime learner. I love to learn, in my, on my commute to work, I'm listening to podcasts about from neurobiologists, like that's the kind of thing that I do. So I just love to learn. It keeps the mind going. And I love to incorporate all these things into my pelvic health, career. So when you're open to seeing that, it just helps me to be a better practitioner, a better clinician, more empathetic.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. that it's awesome that you have that self-motivation. We talk about it a lot for the sterile processing techs because we have to maintain continuing education in order to keep our certifications up. And so, you can go and do continuing education that's just clicking through the pages so you get the CE and you're all done. But there's a difference between seeking out, new information and really expanding yourself.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because we like to really push for individuals to take control of their educational experiences.
Definitely.
So I know you mentioned you're like halfway through your career. You've already got this super extensive alphabet soup, but what's changing for you? We're in this pandemic experience right now, and as a physician, how has that impacted the work that you do as a PT?
Well, it's been interesting the last year and a half. We had to some of the offices closed down, so the clinic that I'm at is outpatient ambulatory care, so people come to therapy. And back in March, they made a decision that they were going to close the clinic down, only have post-op. They kind of triage and kind of prioritize post-op patients and workers' comp patients, and then everybody else had to be on hold. And so I argued as much as I can to say pelvic health is essential, but they weren't buying that. And so, patients were postponed and we all had to get reallocated. So I didn't really want to get reallocated to just doing anything. So I called up labor and delivery and said, do you need doulas? So what happened was, I should put this on my bio. It's not even on my bio. What happened was, and I don't know if you remember back, was that support people were not allowed in the delivery room. And so there's a lot of bad press. New York had, their thing come out a few weeks ahead of Philadelphia. And so there's a lot of bad press coming out of New York that laboring moms were delivering alone. And so, bad press. So Jefferson was like, they were trying to figure out how are we going to solve this problem, because it's not appropriate. No. And so sure enough, I was like, ring, ring, ring. Do you guys need any doulas? Like, I'm a Jefferson employee, and I can be your doula rather than having any random person on the street, because people are going to be alone or so forth. So I quickly became certified to be a doula, and I was delivering babies for 6 months during the pandemic.
Way to pivot.
Yeah, that's one of those things, is kind of look for the opportunity. Otherwise, I would have been, in the ED checking people's security. And I mean, all those things were important in the middle of a pandemic. All those things were important. It just didn't really advance my career. So I wanted to do something that was relevant. So I became a doula and I delivered. So that's one little change that happened in my practice. But the other was providing telehealth. So for a period of time up until October of 2021, we've been allowed to do telehealth and get reimbursed for that. And so being able to provide telehealth to patients for physical therapy has been, a broad eye-opening and interesting, because a lot of times you're asking your patient, what do you do at home? How are you doing your exercises? Can you up and down? And then to see people doing the exercises in the house, you're like, oh, wait, I can see how that doesn't work for you to lay down and do that, et cetera. And so it's nice to see people problem solve, going up and down the stairs or doing the exercises on the floor, on the couch. And, it's really not a good setup. So you're able really everybody's working from home. So I'm like, show me your home ergonomic setup so I can give you some tips on how not to have an achy back or prolonged injuries, that kind of thing. So that was helpful. That was, super helpful. And I do hope that we'll be able to continue doing that even after this pandemic is over, or the bulk of it is behind us.
Yeah. Right. We're in the new normal. So when patients come in to see you, understanding that you're specializing in pelvic rehabilitation and lymphedema, what type of symptoms or what type of conditions do patients typically come to you in?
So the pelvic floor has 6 jobs. And so I say, the bicep, everybody's familiar with the bicep. It's your arm. It flexes the arm and then allows the arm to extend. So kind of it's like one job. The pelvic floor has 6 jobs. So you're the sphincters, they're kind of in there to kind of urethra, vaginal, anal, and vaginal was somebody with a vagina. And so they help to close if you want them closed, or open if you want them open. So that's the sphincters. Sexual appreciation to maintain erectile tissue. Support to help support those organs, your reproductive, your GI, and your urologic organs, and then stabilize. So the pelvic floor, people don't really know that much about this, is the pelvic floor actually, when you stand on one leg and you don't kind of drop off to the side, it's because your pelvic floor helps you to allow to transfer those forces across from your hip up to your back. So stabilizing the pelvis. And then the sump pump, the pelvic floor works with the diaphragm, because when you take a deep breath in, the pelvic floor kind of goes pistons with that. So it has that effect. And then safety. One of the other things we say is safety. The pelvic floor actually does this protective contraction. So when you're scared or anxious or watching a scary movie and you're kind of like this, or you're nervous or something and your kind of shoulders are up here, what you really don't realize, a lot of people don't know, is your pelvic floor is actually kind of up there also. So it can hold tension if you have prolonged anxiety or whatever. So the problems that people come to therapy with are any one of those things affected. Right. If the muscles are stretched out or weak, they can have instability, leaking, incontinence, pain. If the muscles are kind of too tense or tight or something like that, you could have issues with constipation or painful penetration, or pain or difficulty walking, back pain, difficulty breathing, those types of things. So people show up with a wide variety of issues. And that's without even having some kind of surgery, vaginal delivery, or some kind of pelvic or abdominal surgery, which affects how the pelvic floor functions. So there's a lot of things that the pelvic floor does, which means there's a lot of things that it can be involved with when things are not working.
There you go. So can you tell me a little about the pelvic floor? What symptoms am I looking for if my pelvic floor isn't functioning as it should?
The most common one is incontinence. If you can't hold your urine, if you can't hold your gas or your stool, that's probably one of the most common ones that people will have difficulty with. And but sometimes it's the opposite issue, where you're holding things in too long, like constipation. Constipation isn't just take more fiber. It could be the muscles aren't relaxing, so you can have a good bowel movement or something like that, or you don't have a good diaphragm, pelvic floor interaction, those kinds of things. So those are the two biggest categories. If the muscles are weak, you have leaking, instability problems. And if the muscles are, we say, too tight, not relaxing, then you have tension problems.
So I want to keep my pelvic floor in a good condition. If I'm trying to be preemptive about it, what would I do just in general in my lifestyle to make sure that it's strengthened and it's not too, like, I'm not too tight, I'm not too relaxed? What are some things I can do to take care of my pelvic floor?
I would like to know that.
Yeah. Good. So my top suggestions are: don't be stressed.
Quit all stress today.
That's an easy one. That's an easy one. Take stress off the list.
Just stress off the list. Right? But yeah, when you're stressed or tension or tight, and everybody has stress. So it's not about not being stressed. It's about not remaining in your stressful state. So you need to have the flexibility to be able to respond to stressful situations, but you also need to not stay there. Evolutionary wise, we weren't never meant to be always running away from saber-toothed tigers. At some point, you get to safety and you can relax. And but it is very challenging, because there's so many things that are stressful that you do not have control over. And that could be your physical environment, and some things like microaggressions and trauma, and some things that you're internalizing as stressful and you don't even realize.
Right.
that they're stressful. And
that's what crossed my mind when you were talking, was like that kind of clenched
Mhm.
feeling, because
Yeah.
like we think about it with people like clench their teeth all the time, but I'm like, I wonder if
Mhm.
people are like holding that in
Yeah.
their bodies.
Yep. There's actually one of my friends did a research study and kind of looked at the correlation between TMD dysfunction and pelvic floor dysfunction. There was a high correlate, like 80% of the
Wow.
people that were showing up for TMD had pelvic floor problems.
Wow.
Yeah. So a high amount. So don't be stressed, or at least have strategies when you do get stressed, have strategies to get out of that. So if you have a stressful commute, and then you have a stressful job, and then you come home and you have a stressful home environment, and then you don't get to sleep, and then you repeat that cycle over and over and over and over again, it really just leads to not just muscle perpetuating, but hypertension and a lot of other metabolic problems. So having a strategy for stress management, and it doesn't have to be go run for 45 minutes. It could just be mindfulness meditation, deep breathing, relaxation, closing your eyes, not staring at screens late at night. Like there's lots of ways that you can get off of your stress phase, and it'll help you overall, not just pelvic floor.
What about quitting your job? What about that? Don't do that. Okay. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Unless you have a backup plan.
Unless you have a plan.
But you know what, though? I had a conversation with a patient the other day, and I said, the highest correlate for pain is a dissatisfied work environment. It's not your age, it's not your MRI, it's not your imaging, it's not how much arthritis you have. The highest correlate for are you in pain is, are you satisfied at work?
That's amazing. Yeah. But it makes sense, right? Like, especially for as much time as we spend there, and if you're working in high stress environments or toxic environments, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Joe, that I did not know that. That's interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting.
So my other top on the list for kind of how to protect your pelvic floor is exercise, right? So when you breathe, your pelvic floor goes up and down, and so your diaphragm, they work together. And so regular breathing, not sucking in your belly, trying to make yourself look really skinny and thin, that leads to other problems. Let your belly do the work, and your pelvic floor will kind of work with it. And again, that helps with relaxation. Anyway, back to number one. Right. But exercise is a great realization, because your pelvic floor needs to contract to hold things in, but it also needs to relax and let go. So you need the full excursion. And some things like deep breathing or regular exercise do help to kind of maintain that. Yes.
What kind of exercises help the pelvic floor?
I was just segue. We're seeing eye to eye. So aerobic exercise really is just fine. But so people talk about Kegel exercises.
Right.
Dr. Arnold Kegel came up with this back in the 40s, right? And so, Dr. Arnold Kegel, history lesson here, Dr. Arnold Kegel came up with these pelvic floor exercises because after the war, they needed to have people kind of getting busy and having babies to repopulate the planet after, World War II decimated the planet. So everybody was concerned about pelvic health and women kind of being able to have babies. So getting that pelvic floor strength back. So that's what Dr. Kegel was up to. But Kegel exercises really are pelvic floor exercises, strengthening, holding the pelvic floor, and relaxing and letting go. So that's what many people think about Kegels and Kegel exercises. I just call them pelvic floor exercises. I don't call them Kegels because the way that they're written is kind of interesting. We've evolved since then, since the 40s. But so Kegel exercises is twofold. One is, can you squeeze your pelvic floor and hold it? Hold. That's endurance. That kind of helps you to get to the bathroom, right? Squeeze and hold long enough so you can get up from where you're at, walk across the room and not leak, right? That's endurance. And then you have quick contractions, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go. Those quick contractions are the ones that help you not pee when you cough, laugh, sneeze, that kind of thing. So you need to practice both the long holds and the quick ones. And
Yes.
a lot of people read online, and Dr. Kegel came up with like the long hold ones, but they kind of forget about the quick ones, and they want to know why they're leaking when they laugh, cough, sneeze, because they're not practicing the quick ones.
Yeah. And I hope it's clear, but when we're talking about the pelvic floor, we're talking about all humans, right? So as we're not just saying Kegels are for women, we're saying for all of us, men, women, and in between, you can use these Kegel exercises to strengthen your short and long holds.
Yeah. Men and women have pelvic floors, and all genders in between.
All of them.
There's a question here by Leslie. Question: how damaging are those Spanx corsets to the pelvic? How are they?
Well, they're less damaging than the Victorian era tie down things.
So we've evolved from the yanking corsets.
Right. Yeah. So here's the thing. Women kind of want to have this hourglassy look and kind of hold things in. And so what happens is when you are pulling in at the midsection, we kind of say it's like squeezing the toothpaste tube from the middle. Okay. So what happens when you squeeze a toothpaste tube from the middle? These things squirt out the bottom and they squirt out the top. And so you don't want things kind of poking out the bottom. And that includes like prolapse and so things like that. So abnormal pressures in the middle without being distributed throughout can be problematic. So it's not even just the Spanx, it's just the chronic holding your breath or, narrowing like that are really problematic. So wearing Spanx to kind of go to a wedding and so forth is probably not too problematic because your Spanx kind of go from the knee. I don't know which Spanx you're wearing, but the ones that they're like the shorts, right? They go from the knee kind of up. They're distributing a little bit, but chronic sucking, the issue really is a chronic sucking in and holding in at the waist really creates abnormal pressures in the abdominal cavity, which can be problematic for the pelvic floor.
And that I'm so glad she asked that because it also makes me think about we see these sweat bands as well for working out, but would it be pretty much the same concept? You're cinching yourself at the waist and you're having that toothpaste tube effect.
Yeah, those waist trainers.
Yes, waist trainers.
Those are more problematic than the Spanx because theirs are just kind of cinching at the waist. The Spanx actually kind of get like the thigh jiggle and the butt jiggle and the belly jiggle, all that together. So that's at least the Spanx at least distributed a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And if we're doing those Kegel exercises, because I've heard about it, for women's health, but it was always this kind of thing where you could do it anywhere, right? Is that the case? Is it really safe to kind of do your Kegel exercises at any point? Or are there certain things that I should take in consideration when I want to try to start that practice for myself?
Good question, because you don't want to be continually doing Kegel exercises. So you can do them anywhere because you don't need any special equipment. I can do them right now.
Right. I just did 2.
Quick ones, I'm sure.
Nobody knew. I'm stronger.
So you can do them anywhere. Nobody can see what you're doing, or nobody should see what you're doing, and you don't need any special equipment. So that's what make it great. But you don't want to do them all the time because then again, you need the lift and you need the relaxation. You need the full thing. And so there is such a thing as fatigue. So you don't want to fatigue out the muscles. So if you don't have any problems, 1 set a day is plenty. If you do have problems, then, we want to bump up your routine to a couple of times a day. 30 to 80 reps total is kind of the research says somewhere in there.
Question. So personal question. I will ask it when we get back. So we're going to take a 30-second break. And guys, we'll be right back with Dr. Dugan to answer some more questions about the pelvic floor. And we'll go into Jamaica too. We went to Jamaica on a medical mission, and we'll go through that on the other side, guys. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the show. We have Dr. Dugan in the house, the wonderful Alessandra Nicholson, and it's just me, SterileMD. Nothing special about me. So, but we're getting into the pelvic floor and pelvic muscles, and I have a question. So, guys, don't judge me, all right? Don't judge me. I gotta ask this question because I have this feeling sometimes, right? I'm down there sometimes. I have a little feeling like sometimes when I get home, I want to go, right? But when I am not home, I'm doing everything else. I don't want to go. But like I think it's a mental thing. So sometimes I have to train my brain like I'm not home yet, so don't try to go yet. But if I'm like going to stores and all over the place all day long, I have no urge to go. So what's causing that?
So your brain, it is a mental thing, right? Your brain is preoccupied when you're doing other things. So you're not really thinking about how full your bladder is. You have a good amount of capacity in the bladder to hold. So when you're home and you're not necessarily thinking about anything else and the bathroom is kind of right there, your brain says, it's time to go. It's convenient. I can go. You're going to the bathroom when it's convenient for you, regardless of what you're doing. So it is helpful. So it is really a mental thing, is kind of what else is your brain attending to that you can either ignore the physiology of the bladder filling.
And is there any potential for harm in that? I think about it for us, like as we're on the floor, sometimes it can be really hard to get to your breaks. And some of us are just so inclined to keep going. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go. Is there any potential for us to be harming ourselves by just kind of holding it?
So, no, I mean, so the bladder has a wide range. So let's just say, let's call it 600 mLs of capacity. Most people are going and you're emptying about 300 mLs.
So even when I'm doing the PP dance, it's not because I'm really overflowing.
And your first sensation of urge is usually at like 150. So really, most people are emptying about 50% of their bladder, and their sensation to go is somewhere around 25%. Provided you're not distracted shopping around or whatever. So, and to put that into perspective, half of your bladder capacity, if you went to go sit on the toilet and empty, is generally with a good stream about 10 seconds or so. It's a good stream. So from 300 to 600, like complete capacity, you have a good range and you can kind of distract yourself. So going to the bathroom, a normal range is every 2 to 4 hours. So somewhere around 2 hours, you're emptying about 50% of your bladder capacity with normal water consumption. Now, all this is really based upon how much you're drinking, how much you're taking in, and other cues that your body might be telling you. So one thing is people, sometimes they learn to go to the bathroom because when they were a kid sitting on the toilet, mom might have turned the water faucet on so that you can cue you to go to the bathroom. So now what happens as an adult? Every time you hear running water, your brain associates that with having to go to the bathroom. So it's a trigger for many people because that's how they were trained. I'm not judging mom. I'm just saying that's old school. That's probably how they learned from their mother and so forth. So other cues your brain might cue that's like urgency and you kind of need to go. But general capacity really is, 2 to 4 hours with normal hydration, and you're kind of emptying about 10, 12 seconds of stream. But your bladder does have a capacity to really take in a little bit more. For the normal working bladder, there are different conditions of the bladder that don't follow those guidelines, but for most people.
Thank you.
So is it dangerous to hold it? No. You kind of have we talk about the nurse's bladder, the teacher bladder, the surgeon bladder, the PT bladder, like you go 4 hours or whatever, you can go time to break. Healthcare people, like no time to go to the bathroom in between breaks and so forth. So, you can develop a, good capacity there.
All right.
So
That
So
works
I've
for me. Now I'll tell them when they come to the office. Dr. Dugan said you got about 300 more mLs to go.
so question about flights. All right. So I've trained myself not to go on a flight, right? I probably went over the years I've been flying maybe twice. So I trained myself once I get to my seat, don't get up till the plane lands. So is that good or no?
How long's the flight?
Right? Sounds
Doesn't
like
matter.
Oh, it kind of does.
Yeah, I mean for me, it doesn't matter. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So
Yeah,
I'll hold it till I get
yeah.
off.
I mean, normal is 2 to 4 hours. So you could go a 2 to 4 hour flight and not have to get up and go to the bathroom. Like 10 hours to,
Yeah.
Mike got a different little issue.
But you have to look at it like from the time I leave the house, get to the airport, get on the flight. So it might
He said
be
no bathroom breaks on travel days.
Now, what I would tell you is you should get up because your risk, not even the bladder issue, your risk of DVT and blood clots and poor circulation in your lower extremities is really more of the issue with not getting up on a flight. That's an aside.
No, I'm scared now. I'm scared now.
Now you know. Do you gotta
I'm
get
gonna
up?
be in my
Walk
seat like
around.
this.
Yeah, at least do some ankle pumping to get that circulation going.
There you go.
Oh man.
So
Okay.
I heard from a little birdie that you two actually did get to take a flight and go to Jamaica on a medical mission trip. So I would like to hear from both of you what that experience was like, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, that's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool.
So you go. You could explain better.
Yeah, so 3 years, I guess it was 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
We went on a medical mission trip, Medicine in Action, and a urogynecological surgeon who we both know, Dr. Carolyn Eccles, created this Medicine in Action nonprofit to do medical missions in Jamaica. And so it's a multidisciplinary team to go down to the underserved population in Jamaica and do urogynecologic surgeries. And so Dr. Eccles and I met many years ago. And of course, me being the nosy person that I am, said, who's doing the PT? And she's like, we don't have anybody doing PT. So I said, I have to come. And so we went, and her part of the mission was to, go, and the patients are pre-screened by their gyne, and we go down and do 1 day of patient assessments, and then 3 days of surgery, and then go to the next town, a day of patient assessment, 3 days of surgery, and then the next town, a day of assessment, 3 days of surgery. So I was helping to do the assessments. So of course, whenever there's surgery, you need to have sterile processing, you need to have a process. And so obviously Deannard was helping in that realm, which is, just making sure they have a process. And so like everything from start to finish, anything that we're doing in the States is helpful to help them with establishing protocols and sterile protocols and processing, and the surgery itself, and then the rehabilitation and post-op. So, I did a couple of days of, post-op patients who had been down. The mission is twice a year. So people who had surgery in March, I can follow up with them in November. How are you doing? Are you still no? Because the last thing you want if somebody has surgery is for them to blow out their surgery because they're putting on spank. No, because they're
messing with them waist training.
Right, exactly. So, you want to make sure people aren't blowing out their surgery, and they got to have correct support and they're using their pelvic floor muscles correctly. You don't want somebody kind of having surgery and then being there straining and pushing and doing all kinds of weird things. So that's really where the rehab helps post-surgically, and then even just pre-surgical screening. Some people aren't surgical candidates and they can just get some exercises and they don't need to have surgery. And so it was helpful to kind of triage the patients, see some of the post-op visits. But even it was just cool to just be in the surgery and see the process. It was one of those. It's like, there's an old commercial, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody, listen, I'm dating myself. So like when Carolyn Eccles shows up, like everybody, there's like 10 people in the OR just looking to see what she's doing. And
like, what's going on in here?
It's just amazing. Just even just the concept of the reconstructive surgery. Yeah.
So what was that like for you, Deannard? What was
Well,
your experience with the medical mission trip?
I learned a lot, you know.
Dr.
Just,
Dugan was D working or was he just on vacation in Jamaica?
He taught me all these equipment. We were sorting through all the scissors and the probes and the forceps, and I'm like, "What's this? What's the difference between Alice and this and that?"
Okay. She remembers. So you must have been doing something. Okay.
all right.
He taught me a lot.
So what I really took away from the Jamaica trip, the mission to Jamaica was the issues that a lot of these third world countries experience, people not being able to find that help, the help that they need to actually get that work done, get the surgery done, or even get an opinion on what their issue is. So one of the things that touched me, and we were there from early morning. We had people waiting there from like 5 a.m. to like 10 a.m. Live like two hours away. They started their journey from like 1, 2 in the morning to actually get to the clinic, because that was the only chance of getting an opinion, having the chance to get surgery to get that fixed. So they hadn't drank, they hadn't went to the bathroom, they hadn't done anything for 5 hours, basically just sitting on the step of the clinic waiting for us to show up. So we were like rock stars, basically, if you want to put it in those terms. But they were just waiting, and we even had to turn persons away who had serious issues because we didn't even have enough time to see all of them. So that really touched me, and I definitely want to go back. And I learned a lot of things about issues with women, which I didn't know, and I was surprised. I was surprised. It's not even funny. I was surprised. I didn't know about prolapse. I was like, what the heck is that? And I was like, is that what's going on? So, and then I was in the room, professional, of course, and I saw it, and I didn't even know that was something that was possible from the female standpoint, from their body. I didn't know that could happen. So then during surgery, we repaired, we cut, we sutured, and I even did a little suture myself. So that, thank you to Miss Nicole. Eccles, sorry, Miss Eccles, let me do that. But that was definitely eye-opening to me from that standpoint. Actually being in the room, seeing the actual surgery, actually reprocessing those instrumentation with the instrumentation without all the facilities we have in the US right now. We had Metroside, we had we had quick turnarounds, we had soaking times, and some things weren't done according to the IFUs of the instrumentation or the chemicals that were used. So what I did was did a little education with the nurses down there on how to soak the instrumentation, what to look for, what's good, how to inspect the instrumentation, so that in the next case it won't be any issues for cross contamination, etc., etc. So it was definitely eye opening. The nurses were definitely great and very responsive down there. So I really appreciate the trip, and I learned a lot from all the doctors. I was the only non-MD down there, so I was like, oh man, I hope I bring something to the table. But I'll definitely be able to contribute.
Bring something to the table,
but
right?
Those two things are really funny because you knew the instruments that some of the doctors didn't know the names of the instruments.
Right?
We had a big box of instruments and supplies.
So
open and said, what?
So it's kind of funny. But I did see we had this one little instrument to do for the little boys to get
the circumcision.
The circumcision. It's like a little tiny instrument, and Deannard, you knew what it was.
Yeah, I see that almost every day. So yeah,
but the gynecologist didn't know what it was.
Didn't know what it is. And
then the urologist swung by and it's like, oh, I know what that that is.
Yeah.
I know what that is.
Yeah. That was definitely, I really liked the trip. I learned a lot. And then to see how people function on a daily basis, and everything is normal to them, but it's like so strange to you, like,
Yeah.
oh, they're using this reusable wrap for like 20 years now. So it's like, oh shit, we
Right,
can't
things
throw it.
that we would stop the
Right.
forces for, right?
Exactly. And you like, I want to tell them throw it out, but they won't have anything to,
Right.
you know what I mean? So
Right,
it's
so it's
like,
like trying to negotiate and offer the highest standard that you can,
right.
right?
hmm
Because otherwise, there's no care.
Right, exactly. Like they can't be at the level we at, because we throw in the US, we throw everything out. Like, it's not good, we throw it out. But in certain places, that's all they have. Something that's a single use will have will be reprocessed. So so you gotta look at either being able to help the patient, with the possibility of maybe cross contamination, or maybe not doing it effectively, or not being able to help the patient at all. So you have to kind of weigh that, ethically.
Yeah.
So
I learned something from Deannard.
what's that?
So I develop an interview style, and so you don't really think twice about, I'm asking my questions, and the doctor's asking their questions. Do you have any problems with peeing? Do you have any problems with bowel movements, etc.? And then she said, all right, I'm going to ask you something that's a little bit personal. Can you tell me about your sexual habits? And then Deannard's like, isn't all the other questions personal?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
and I was like, I didn't really think about it that way.
But this one extra personal.
But from his perspective as like a male and not hearing these questions all the time, you realize that how you're asking questions can be perceived in a different way. So I was like, now that you say that, those are kind of personal questions.
Deannard was clutching his pearls. He said,
yeah. Like, oh, it's like, that's all that's supposed to know. I'm like, dang, I could have everything. Yeah, it was kind of awkward for me because I wanted to be professional. I didn't want to look scared, or like it was something really new to me.
Yeah.
So
it's funny, like working in those units that do have mother baby, because you can see that level of fear on the men's faces when they come in with their partners, and it's just like, it's okay. Deep breaths. Yeah. You're okay.
Yeah.
But good on you for stepping out and doing something that was so totally outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. We try. The main thing is I wanted to help the ladies out, because there was only 4 of us, and that clinic was all day long, and it wasn't easy. So yeah, definitely. At least we were able to help those people, the majority. But I still feel bad about those people we had to turn away, who traveled 3-4 hours to get there, no breakfast, no lunch, nothing to drink until the clinic actually opened. So yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. And Dr. Dugan, I thought I heard you mention that you've traveled multiple places. So was that all in doing this type of work, or have you traveled in your field for other purposes?
Yeah, so not pelvic health related, but my specialty of lymphedema, actually, the heart of where the current standard of care for lymphedema was developed was this place called the Foldy Clinic in Hinterzarten, Germany.
Right now.
So I had an opportunity to go to Hinterzarten and learn from Dr. Ethel Foldy and Professor Michael Foldy, who developed the current standard of care, complete decongestive therapy, and learned, kind of straight from the horse's mouth in Hinterzarten, Germany, and take a week-long clinical experience there. So, and then, of course, from there, everybody found out that I went to that. So can you come speak here? Can you come speak here? Can you lecture here? Can you lecture there? So my lymphedema world kind of expanded, that way. But it was a very interesting experience talking about care, right? So you think about how we deliver care in the United States is, healthcare is a for-profit system, et cetera. You go to places where there's socialized medicine. Well, you go to places like Jamaica where it's kind of, there's lack of. And then you go to places like in Europe where it's, socialized care. So everybody has access to care. So you think it's really so great, but it's very interesting because one of the things they think about is, like the lymphedema clinic. Lymphedema is very labor intensive. So one of the issues that they have is people know that they can get care. So they'll kind of let their condition kind of slide for a little bit. And they know that they can check into the Foldy Clinic for a month in Hinterzarten, which is like a spa town in the summer, and get a lymphedema tune-up. And then, they kind of sort of take it for granted. Right. And kind of go there. So there are some aspects about the socialized medicine. Now, there's a waiting list, so not everybody can get in. And that's one of the things with socialized medicine. There's like people wait around for appointments because the access is limited because there's not enough providers. And so, people do have to wait around, but then, there is a little bit of complacency in your health because they just know that things will be taken care of for them. So it's a very different kind of perspective on thinking about how healthcare is delivered and how people choose to access care.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting to me. That hits home for me because one of my aunts has a pretty severe case of lymphedema. It's actually disabled her to the latter half of her life. But I remember when things were kind of first starting, we grew up in a rural area in the Midwest. So getting out to specialty clinics or like finding a PT like yourself that had that much extensive training and wasn't just like watching a YouTube video or, it was tough. And there were a lot of times where we traveled really long distances to go to other states, to try to get into these different clinics to find folks like yourself that actually had extensive experience with lymphedema. It felt in the beginning almost like it was some, rare disease that no one had ever heard of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went to India and you see lymphedema walking around the street all the time.
Right. It was interesting because I'm so interested in you mentioned that too. Because when we were, first researching, that's what we would see were images of folks in India with these really extensive cases, but they were just kind of living their lives like, they have lymphedema, and that's that.
Yeah. And they're there because they don't have access to the care. And even what we provide now is not covered. My time is covered by insurance, but the supplies are not. Unless you have breast cancer, supplies aren't covered. It's very, and the thing, like bilateral lower extremity lymphedema is, it's primary. They don't have access to care. They're late. They're diagnosed late because they're told that they have to lose weight, and it's not a weight issue. It's a lymphedema issue. And so we're off the topic of pelvic health now, but it's important to think about, like these specialties exist because, we need to get the word out about these specialties because people are going through their lives being told the wrong thing. Right. Primary lymphedema is a prime example. It runs in families. And so people are told your mom's got heavy legs, you're going to have heavy legs. You just need to lose weight or that kind of thing. And that's not the answer. They need appropriate compression. And it's not even that it just doesn't look appealing. It's that you're susceptible to infections and having infections and potentially amputations because of these infections and so forth. So there are downstream effects from just telling people the wrong thing, and body image and all this other things. You just really kind of end up being detrimental. So. Absolutely. One of the things I've learned a lot in my care is to really just, if you don't understand it, don't dismiss the patient. Help them to get to somebody that does understand what their condition is, or do some research on your, do a little bit of research.
Do a little research.
You know what I mean? Like you're an educated person. You can do a little bit of research for the person rather than them kind of just being in the blank World Wide Web and finding wrong information or horrific pictures that's going to traumatize them even more.
That terrifies them. Yeah, that's what I remember. She was just so scared. And what we were seeing was just so outlandish. It didn't connect for us.
Yeah.
But I want to ask another question around compression hoses, because I heard you mention having appropriate compression. And I do see some of my staff members wearing compression devices for their shifts, and sometimes we're working 8-hour, 12-hour shifts. What kind of tips would you have for us with those types of garments in the workplace? Is that safe, and what should we take into consideration?
Yeah, the key thing about compression garments is that they should fit right. They shouldn't be rolling down or creating a tourniquet, because that's creating the opposite effect. You're impeding blood flow. But yeah, if you're on your feet for a long period of time, at least a knee high is helpful for you. And generally for lower extremity, 30 to 40 millimeters of compression is appropriate. But the band at the knee should not be rolling. It should be flat, and it should stay flat. And the key thing I like to say about compression garments is the garments help to keep the swelling down, but it doesn't help to get the swelling down. So if you wake up in the morning, you should put the stockings on in the morning. Don't wait until 3 o'clock in the afternoon when your feet are already splaying out of your shoes and then go and put the stockings on. It's too late. The garment doesn't work that way. Okay. Same thing with flying.
Oh man!
Put the stockings on before you go up in the air, and you have decreased atmospheric pressure, and you have swelling in your legs. Put the compression garments on before the legs swell up, not after they're already swollen up. Yeah,
that's a good point. I like that. But I will be walking around the plane taking off my seatbelt. I'll be one of those.
When the seatbelt sign is off.
Please put your seatbelt on. But that's some good information about the compression socks, because I've gotten into compression socks, but not like socks that hold together well. I'm not sure they're compression, but longer socks. I've been doing that over the years, just getting accustomed to wearing those kind of socks, and they seem to work well, because sometimes you're on your feet for 8 to 16 hours at a time. That definitely plays a part in the swelling. And I've tried to get others to wear certain types of shoes and socks and stuff like that, but it sometimes, the swelling is sometimes too much. Your feet can't fit in certain types of shoes, etc., etc., etc. So, what advice do you have on getting some of that swelling down?
Ankle pumps. Take some breaks. Get off your feet. Do some ankle pumps. At the end of the day, don't sit with your legs dependent. Get your feet up and actually get into bed. Don't sit in front of the TV and then kind of fall asleep in front of the TV.
Don't do it.
Yeah, you need to actually get into bed.
Okay, I'll do it.
And then I also want to say, important for patients and us for advising patients is, those white TED stockings. Once you are upright, they do nothing.
Oh,
they don't do anything.
Never knew.
They're first lying supine.
Okay.
There's no gradient to them. So the compression stockings that you're wearing, there's a gradient. So you got more pressure distal than proximal. So the blood doesn't kind of pool in the ankles. TED stockings don't have that. So once you're upright, those stockings are really futile. So they just need to go in the trash after people are out of the hospital for a little bit.
Because we really be trying to send them home with you.
No, they're not good.
Not that.
They don't do anything that way.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So many good tips for us, keeping that stress low, turning those cell phones off before bedtime, go to bed, don't just sit there. We got the Kegels. We got so much good information to come away with. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This has been fantastic. And, you see that pelvic health is holistic. It's not just about the pelvic floor. It's about head to toe, what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great spending time with you this last hour. Thank you to Leslie for commenting. She says thank you. Thank you to Mona Davis. I appreciate you hanging in there. Thank you for tuning into the show. And thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra, guys. We will see you in the next show. Alessandra, anything you want to...
I was like, wait, we have such big announcements.
Oh, yeah.
So before we let you guys go, if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. And then this weekend, Deannard and I will be participating in the Fresh Voices panel that's being hosted by the CCSA chapter through Isham and with Beyond Clean. So if you guys are around, we'll be speaking on different topics on Saturday morning. So please, we'd appreciate seeing you guys there. It'll be the first panel for us. So we're both really excited.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to speaking. I'm a little nervous, guys. Bear with me. The topics are great, and we'll knock it out of the park. So, guys, once again, please like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you could be informed every time we have a new video coming out. So, guys, thank you so much. Alessandra, anything else? Mrs. Dugan, Dr. Dugan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, guys, we'll see you next week in the next show. Peace.
Peace.